All right. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Can you believe that we are on day number 4? This is crazy. Welcome back to day number 4, episode of Help Healing Everyday Life Problems in a COVID-19 World. I'm brought to you by Beacon Institute. Well, I am half of your Beacon Institute host this evening. My name is Dr. Shayna D. Lewis, but everybody calls me Dr. Shayna. I'm a licensed professional counselor, a motivational speaker. I am an educator, a trainer, a professor. I am merely just a servant, and I love serving in this capacity, educating those in our community about mental health issues. And so, allow me to let my co host introduce herself.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Rochelle Whitaker, educational psychologist, mental health therapist, parent educator, and author. And so I am excited for tonight because we have so many questions, especially about parenting, right? Especially in a COVID-19 world, because it looks very different. And so I'm here just to educate and to inform. And so I am excited about tonight and ready to get the show on the road.
Yes, and I know if you got some good questions tonight, y'all need to bring them because we have an amazing guest that Dr. Whitaker will introduce in just a minute. We've already had some amazing nights already. I mean, we dealt with last night depression, grief, anxiety with Dr. Robinson was whoo, that was so awesome. If you missed that, you do really want to go back and get that replay. It was amazing. And the night before that was let me see, who else did we
The
talk
night
to?
before that was the men,
Oh yeah,
Jimmy and Michael.
that
That
was
was awesome.
good
Yeah.
too. Gosh. And day one was all about domestic violence with Dr. Shanita Brown. So we have had some phenomenal folks who come already before us at in this virtual summit. So definitely please do us a favor, share this video with people in your world, couples and families. We all need this conversation tonight. I'm telling
Yes.
you. It's going to be really good. And as you join us in the live, could you please pop in the chat box, tell us who you are, where you're joining us from. Know that this is a live discussion. So if you have questions or comments, we are definitely going to be answering those as we go through tonight's broadcast. So I will get out of the way, let Dr. Whitaker do our introductions, and we will get the show on the road.
All right, everybody. So again, I am excited, right? Because parenting and marriage in a COVID-19 world looks very different. We know that one of the top reasons for marital conflict is finances, right? And I think I shared with you all a couple of nights ago, 5.4 million people are unemployed right now. So we can only imagine what kind of impact that is having on married couples right now. Not only that, but married couples are both working from home, so they're interacting more than they ever have. So just a plethora of different issues. For some people, this social distancing and being at home with your significant other has been phenomenal. It has, relationships have blossomed. Some that were going, headed for divorce are now going in the other direction. Whereas, the other is headed now. Some were good and now they're heading toward divorce because it's just that much of a stressor. COVID-19 has been that much of a stressor. And so I want to introduce our expert for tonight on parenting and relationships, Dr. Kate Walker. She is a licensed supervisor and a licensed marriage and family therapist supervisor. She's trained as a marriage and family expert. She specializes in couples and families, though especially those struggling to survive addictions and infidelity. Her clinical experience also includes working with families with a member suffering from addiction, parents with challenging children, victims of abuse, and individuals struggling with depression and anxiety. She received both her master's and her PhD from Sam Houston State University and her bachelor's of music degree from the University of Texas at Austin. This is something that I think is just amazing and is, very different. She's a freelance professional bass player for singer-songwriters in the Houston area. So help us welcome Dr. Kate Walker. Dr. Shayna, back to you.
All right, very, very good. Thank you, Dr. Whitaker. I'm excited about all of that. And I do love the fact that she plays the bass guitar. I think that is So let's go ahead and bring on Dr. Kate Walker. Hello, Dr. Walker.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Shana, Dr. Rochelle. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited about this. My goodness, we need this so much. And I just applaud you both for getting this together and partnering with Sam Houston and Beacon Institute. This is so needed. And thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. When we thought families, we thought you, because you know, the reality is you have to have folks who are in this space all the time who can really speak to what's happening, right? And so it is such an important time because one of the things that we know, we were talking about this all week, we are in a new world. We don't recognize any peace. Like there is nothing about our lives, nothing about our worlds that is recognizable. That includes our families. Things look different because we're taxed with different things. So as a clinician and you're practicing in this field, focusing on families, what are some of the issues that you're seeing right now, or maybe things that have been highlighted, maybe things that are new that families are really struggling with right now?
Well, what's interesting to me is it's taken sort of a developmental turn as things will, right? So right when the pandemic started, it was interesting. We saw people come in with kind of the same old thing, like they've been waiting to get in and this is what they need to talk about. And, the same arguments and the same type of communication. We do an assessment and figure out kind of the same things were happening. And it wasn't until probably, we're at the end of May. So I'll say probably the end of April that we really started to see the anxiety and the depression creeping in as its own thing. And it was surprising to everybody. Both partners are just trying to figure out, okay, what's going on? I usually don't feel like this. They're letting us out. So why do I feel like this? Or I can wear a mask. So I'm okay with that. Why do I feel like this? So it's almost like as families, and individuals within a family, we don't know ourselves anymore. And now we're trying to get along with our spouse who they don't know who they are anymore, right? So it's developmentally, it's turned into a thing. And I think families and marriages are trying real hard to keep the problems kind of normal. Like, okay, I really want to stick to this issue with communication, or I really want to stick to this issue of we're trying to survive infidelity. And we just can't ignore it. It's like another person in the room.
Right. And so how do you ignore those things, right? Because it seems like what you described makes perfect sense to me, because at the beginning of COVID-19, and even with the work that I'm doing with individual folks, like we were strong, like we were doing the things, we were using all the coping skills, like we were ready, we were here for the battle. But as the weight of COVID-19 continued to get heavier, it's kind of like I described it. When you're lifting weights, the first rep is pretty easy, but when you keep lifting it, muscle fatigue is real, right? And so we can have this emotional fatigue that happens in day 65, 70, I don't know, whatever day we're in at this point, so and when you consider that it's not just you going through it, but you may have a mate, some children, there may be some extended family, that may be a part of it. It's a lot, Dr. Walker. It's a lot. And one of the things I'm wondering is, are families going to be able to survive this if they were already in a vulnerable space before we got here? Because some folks were already dealing with, like you say, stuff. And then here this comes with new stuff. We don't know who we are. So how are we now going to navigate this thing? What do we do?
Well, I always go back to my, Al-Anon AA standby, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. When we're experiencing some kind of a stress, I'm hungry, I'm angry, I'm lonely, I always say, the dishes look dirtier if I've skipped lunch today, or if somebody cut me off in traffic, I can guarantee my husband's going to make me more annoyed. So if we're under this constant state of stress from just not knowing what the next day is going to bring, we're going to be in a worse place to be that person that our spouse needs us to be. One of the things I came across when I was researching what to talk about, it was in the back of my mind and I didn't know the word for it, but it's a shared unity. So you think about like after 9/11, after the Boston Marathon bombings, even after a hurricane, we come together because there's sort of this common villain, right? So our body does this thing, Freud called it splitting. So we know who the good guys and the bad guys are. So we're together and we're going to fight this together, and it's unifying and it's great. We don't have that with COVID-19. We're looking at our neighbor, or we're looking at the guy that walked into the store alongside me that didn't have a mask on or did have a mask on. We're seeing these arguments in homes becoming political. Well, you're not going to wear a mask. Well, what about the rest of us? Are you going to endanger all of us? And so this is becoming very symbolic. And I find, and this is my experience, I have no data, it seems as though people are looking for a villain. They're looking for someone to blame. And so, that's pretty familiar territory for us as family therapists, right? We're used to seeing that in families. We're used to seeing that with kiddos. We're used to seeing that with spouses. So, kind of here we go again, right? We've got to help everybody understand we're in this together.
We are. So shared unity, that's definitely a word. It is. And so in one respect, I would think that would be helpful. But the other piece of it is the bad guy becomes someone who would have been a good guy, right? Who might have been your mate in the situation.
Yeah, so I'm going to share a story. So, one of the things early on, and it's a personal story because those are always the best. Right when the pandemic started, I didn't have to leave my house. I fixed up my telehealth station here. I didn't go back to my office. And here I was. My husband was graciously going and making all of our grocery runs. I have my mother-in-law lives in a cabana in our backyard. So we were really focusing on keeping her safe. Well, I noticed that when I would try to sleep, it was like an elephant on my chest. Oh, what's that? Okay. I've read about that somewhere. So I know that I'm starting to suffer from some anxiety. Well, as things start opening up, I also have a senior in high school, and we scheduled her senior portraits. We were going to go down to the Strand. So once everything was safe, we were going to social distance. We were going to go down there. Well, my husband couldn't go. It was going to be me. So for some reason, I found I want to say it was therapeutic. I would love to say it was therapeutic. And I was making excellent points for about an hour and a half. I was on the phone with him, telling him everything that was wrong with him. Right? Of course, I went down there, had a great time. On the way home, I said, about halfway through that conversation, I figured out it was me. Right? So I figured out that my anxiety was turning me into a hypervigilant, overstressed, anxious person, and which makes me no good as a partner. And that's all of us. That's normal. When I am in a bad spot, I am a lousy partner. I cannot create a safe space for anyone to be their normal human self. So I think that's my role right now with a lot of couples and families is I normalize that. I really try to help people understand, you're really just not going to be in a position to be that empathetic, compassionate, safe space. And I'm sorry about that. And that sucks.
Right.
But there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to this. We will get better at it. And I think that's maybe the next step as mental health providers. We're learning kind of what this next step is. We've got the training wheels on. We're kind of learning how to live.
Right.
What's this now going to look like? And it's kind of a uncharted territory now.
Oh my gosh, is it? So that's good though, because what you described is the fact that we have to really take care of ourselves first and acknowledge what we're experiencing, because that is going to impact the family, the couple. It's going to show up inside of those greater relationships. That's important, because it's easy to point fingers though, Dr. Walker. Like,
it's so easy.
It's real easy. I have no problem doing that. But to turn it back and say, okay, hey, what's going on with me? But that's really, and what you're describing, when you were able to get there, and when people get there, that's where the power really is. Because when you're able to say, hey, that's really on me, let me deal with that, then come back, and then we can show up in a different space, right? So that's really important. Taking care of self becomes key to having a healthy relationship.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And I invited my husband to watch this today, so hopefully he'll chime in the chat and say, Kate, you're doing great. You've done so much better.
Exactly. We're working on that. So listen, if you are in the chat box, if you are watching this, just know that this is a live feed. If you have questions or concerns, comments, or you want to share a story with us that you want Dr. Walker to comment on, please feel free to do, because we are really in this whole thing together. And even for people who may not be married, or you may be dating, because those are other relationships as well too, that are couples. You don't live in the same household. That's a whole nother thing as well, because I've had some individuals, I don't see couples, but I see the individual folks, and they're saying, how do you date in this kind of a world? Like, how do you build meaningful relationships when you can't see each other, when you can't touch each other, when you can't, go on dates and things like that? And so that really can deteriorate relationships as well too, if what you know to do, you can't do if you don't have any other ways. So what kind of things can those couples do in order to help themselves in the midst of all of this?
Well, you bring up a great point with, in families with older teens and young 20s, the ones that are suffering are the ones who are lonely and trying to go out and maybe they're recovering from a breakup, or they're, just trying to find their feet. We have I don't know about you, but, I've got clients who, they got started in their second semester of college, and, they got packed up and brought home. So this whole idea of launching, Shana, I'm afraid we may just really see this a brand new world here when it comes to launching. We have such a Western idea that, get out of the house when you're 18.
Right.
We may be seeing a real switch here because it is so lonely out there for these kiddos. Anecdotally, I had a therapist in the Denton area tell me she had a client who was right after the pandemic, when everything was shut down, she was still living on campus in her sorority house. She was the only one there. Everyone was gone, and her parents didn't want her to come home because, like me, they had grandma living at home or something. So they said it wasn't safe. But meanwhile, this 19-year-old is sitting, in a social place, where everything in the house reminds her of her social connections, and it's just incredibly lonely. So I don't know if we're, I hate to say never. But, I just don't know how this is going to play out as far as the whole launching thing, because that's such an important life cycle stage for couples and families. I tell couples, 90% of the couples who end up on my couch, you're here because of launching, right? It's just trying to get to know one another again, right? Get the kids out the door. Let's go be a couple again.
Right.
I don't know what that's going to look like.
Right. And that's interesting though, because people may think that only happens once. That launching in a couple happens at the beginning, when what you just described is it can happen maybe several times depending on what happens inside of your life, and not just with you. Your children are launching, and that happens multiple times. And launching in a COVID-19 world, oh my goodness. Again, there's no point of reference. There's nothing like where do we grab onto? What do we consider? Because not only are we trying to manage ourselves, but we're also, in this case, we bring up the kids, we're trying to manage them because they are distressed. Like you have a senior that's experiencing the whole, loss of things that we thought senior year would end. I have a fifth grader who is launching in the middle school. It doesn't look like what we have planned. And as parents, we have our own feelings about that stuff, right? Because that's a loss that we had wanted for them that we don't get to experience with them either in that way. But yeah, we're all dealing with our own stuff. And that just seems like it's so jumbled up and confused right now when you got four people that are all confused at the same time. It's just, I don't know. It just seems like nothing is impossible, but it definitely makes things perhaps more difficult for some than others. So at what point would a family decide, hey, we need to talk to somebody about this? We do need to get help because, how do we know?
Well, it's always, I don't know about you, but it's always the same thing. Somebody gets symptomatic and has it up to here, or they exhibit a behavior that impacts their job, their relationships, their health, or their freedom, right? And that's unfortunately, I long for the days when people would just come to counseling because they thought, okay, we just need to try to do better, we need to tweak or something. But generally people are going to wait until something happens. And so we get, and in marriage and family therapy, what we usually see is a presenting issue. Usually, I would say, if it's a family you know, a child will be brought in, a young 20, a kid who's struggling to launch. And then you're like, oh, wait a second, there's this marriage thing going on too. You know, infidelity is a huge reason that people come in. Having one partner who's experiencing a lot of depression. One thing we haven't talked about is substance use. One of the things with COVID that I'm seeing is, you know, the drinking, the day drinking, this idea that, well, you know, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. What else we got to do, right?
Probably is somewhere.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's really important as a mental health professional that we assess the alcohol consumption, or, you know, whatever. I always say in terms of are you taking anything illegal or something that's not prescribed to you? We've got folks that, you know, maybe they're very well medicated, their meds are good, they're right. But because of the stress and anxiety, they're not taking them now as directed. So we're seeing some symptoms because of that, right? And so when you are married, when you're the partner of someone who's not managing their medication, or they've let go of their coping skills, or they can't go to their meetings anymore. You know, they don't want to go to an online AA meeting. They don't want to go to an online Al-Anon meeting, or CODA, or Nor-Anon, right? So now we have all these folks who are going back to their old coping skills, and they're struggling and they're suffering. And we have some angry spouses because they don't see what the solution is, right? Because they are, you know, you can't go back to the meeting, it's not safe. Well, I guess it's starting. I don't know. I guess I really can't comment on that. I don't know how safe it is, right? But it's a real dilemma. My face that I just made is the face that a lot of spouses are making when it's coming down to, well, I don't know if I want you to go to the AA meeting because I don't want you to bring anything back, right? So all of those great coping skills, even if somebody had it nailed down for 20 years, it's fallen apart right now. And it's hard. It's hard on families.
It is. It is excessively hard. And one of the things that I wonder is, what makes one family more resilient in a space to be able to, the word that comes to mind is survive this. And I say survive, but I really mean to come out of this thing thriving, right? Because yes, we may have a lot of family stuff. Substance abuse could be something. You mentioned earlier, infidelity might have been something. You got the kid stuff, it's something. What are the character traits, or what are the things that we need to make sure we have in space, in place, structures, systems? I don't know, because I'm sure there's folks that are out there like, I don't even know where to start. I got all this stuff. How do I come out on the other side? Maybe I realize I'm in over my head and I do go get some help. But what are the other things that I need to be thinking about that are going to help us be resilient and through this?
Right. I tell you, step one is always, and we say it in Al-Anon, that's a group for family members of addicted family members, right? So it's all eyes on me, eyes on me. Okay. And that's one of the things when we do family therapy is to recognize, okay, where am I right now? Okay. You know, if I see that my kiddo is misbehaving, or I see that my spouse is ignoring me, or I see that this interaction isn't healthy over here, I've got to check myself, right? Because I have some options here. If I'm breathing, if I'm counting to 10, we call it the art of the pause, right? If you're able to just breathe, take a look around, and then you can decide what to do next. So much that we see going wrong in families when they end up in family therapy, or therapy that requires family therapy, is there's been an escalation to the point of violence. Perfect example, I tell parents all the time, do not try to grab a phone out of a teenager's hand. Okay, do not try to do that, right? And one of the reasons why is that escalation will result in an interaction that becomes a memory, and a memory becomes a part of a family's history, and it becomes a part of a child's narrative, right? So in that moment, if you're the parent who's observing, and I know oftentimes we aren't, oftentimes you're like me driving to Galveston, right? I'm in it, right? But if you are the parent or the partner who's observing, and you're able to just take a breath, you're able to breathe out, you're able to count to 10, get the lay of the land, you can decide what to do next. And as long as you can decide what to do next, then you're not reacting. And so as parents, if you can take some time in the morning before your kids wake up, you know, in the evening after they go to bed, and just write down some expectations. I saw the coolest chart the other day on Facebook. It was a sticker chart for parents. And I wish I'd screenshot it. I didn't though. But it was, you know, a daily chart like we give our kids for chores, but it was, I will play a game with my child today. I will have one
Oh.
conversation with my teenager today. I will do a funny dance. I will do a craft project. So all those things, that's the currency. When you put
Mhm.
that currency in the bank with your
Mhm.
family, not just your kid, right? Your
Mhm.
spouse too, then you're both going to be in a better place when stuff goes off the rails, right? Because it will. You're going to get a bill in the mail. You won't be able to pay your rent.
Yeah.
Your incentive check didn't come in, or it came in, but it wasn't enough.
Mhm.
This stuff is coming. And
Yep.
so when you talk about resiliency, what I hear is, okay, how am I? How am I right now
Mhm.
in this space? And if the answer is I'm not good, then I take a time out, take some breaths till I get okay, and
Right.
then I can re-engage.
Wow, that was awesome. One of the things you said that struck me is you talked about with the example of the kid and the phone. And I'm sure this is one scenario, but it could play out in lots of different ways.
Sure. Yeah.
And so when you decide to make that conscious choice to grab a phone, not you didn't just grab a phone. You created an interaction that's going to happen afterwards. That's then going to become a memory that then becomes this other. So it's like this chain reaction is created and it becomes part of the narrative of your entire family. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think we think like that though, Dr.
No,
Ross. We think
no.
in the moment we are very reactive, especially when you describe the anxieties and the stresses that we may be dealing with right now. No one stops to think, I don't want this in my family story.
Right.
And so we end up working backwards trying to fix that which we chose to do here.
Right.
That's good stuff. I'm hoping folks are getting that the choices we make right now are hugely impactful on the narrative and the story of the family that we are creating, even in the midst of a COVID-19 world.
Right. Absolutely. And let's remember, these are good parents. These are
Yes,
good kids. These are
yes,
good people, right?
yes,
Everybody's just doing their best.
yes.
Right. And when, I've never seen a parent who wants to take a phone away, at least in my experience, who was acting in malice.
Right.
They really, really were trying to do the right thing. And
Hmm.
so a lot of times, I think my role in family and marriage counseling is to help families learn the art of the apology or the art of the comeback.
Okay.
And that is so huge in family healing.
Hmm.
When you can own your part, when you can say, yeah, you know what, the reason I yelled at you, I really can't, it's not okay.
Hmm.
uh, I recognize though that when somebody cuts me off in traffic, I want to come home and kick the dog, and the dog
Hmm.
wasn't here but you were.
Hmm.
And I know I'm sorry isn't going to cut it, but when you're ready, I hope you'll forgive me, and we can have a conversation about it. So
Hmm.
another thing we call it is it's a stance of humility, or we're giving up the right to fight for our justification, right? So no justifying, no minimizing, no blaming. When you've done something wrong, right? When you
Hmm.
have done something and you've thought about it and you recognize it wasn't all your fault, you're not going to take 100% of the blame, but 50% of that is all you.
Hmm.
Then you're able to own it and then go back. And even if it's your child, to be able to say,
Hmm.
you know what, I got to own that what I did was not the correct response. I still don't like what you did. I
Right.
still don't approve of what you're doing.
Right.
There are still going to be consequences, but I'm sorry for my part. And
Got
then I always tell my clients, put a period,
it.
right? Because we all want to keep talking.
No,
But,
we can
if
keep
you hadn't
going.
done, and if I hadn't, and we, no,
Right.
put a
Right.
period in it
Got you.
and step
Period.
away. Yeah.
Yes, like my daughter says, period with a T, like
Oh
period.
my goodness.
They'll put a T on the end of it.
Yes.
That means it's done. That's good though, because I don't know, especially with children, that a lot of parents believe that they are in a space where you might owe a child an apology. There's that whole, old school thought, well, I'm the mama and you the kid. And so that's just how it goes. But I mean, especially right now, I mean, just the level of all of our kids are experiencing the same things we're experiencing in the way that they understand it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So they've lost, and we talked about this last night with the grief and loss of this whole, COVID-19. They've lost what they knew to be their reality in school, with
Yeah.
their friends, socially, they've been impacted, all of these things. So they are working at a deficit right now as well. And as parents, we're expecting them to show up the very same way they always did, even though they're battling the same things we're battling. But and we don't give them room and rope, but we may not realize that our approaches may not be the best, and they may actually exacerbate a problem. And you could owe a kid an apology. Like, that's a real thing.
That's a thing.
That
Yeah.
is a real thing. That's a real thing.
That is the thing. And it's the same, it reminds me, it's not the same, but it reminds me of when a family has gone through a divorce. Shock, anger, denial, bargaining, acceptance, all those stages of grief. I tell parents, anger's in there. Like, we can't pretend that it's not in there, right? Your kid is going to be angry after a divorce. You and your spouse did the best you could. You're trying to divide things. We're all going through the legal, machine, and your kid's angry. It's like a tornado came and wiped out everything that he knew. So he's going to grieve. She's going to grieve. This COVID-19. I can't tell you. And Shani, I go through the day and I will think of something. Oh gosh, I can't wait to go to Austin next weekend oh, wait a second, I can't do that.
No.
Oh, I can't wait to go to that restaurant because, oh wait, they closed.
Yeah.
So we're all doing this grief. I mean, some literature that you read will say, anytime there's a loss, you're going through that grieving process, shock, anger, denial, and the bargaining phase. Remember, the bargaining phase is that phase where you're just trying to be right. You're just trying to have some control somehow. What if only if we just, if we did this, all of that stuff is the bargaining phase of grief. And, I mentioned earlier, I think sometimes my role is to normalize these family interactions. And sometimes if I can help couples and families recognize how well they're doing in these stages of grief, 9 times out of 10, again, my statistics, right? But they will pat themselves on the back and they'll recognize, wow, that's true. Or my kiddo, he may be failing homeschool, but you know what? He's doing really well considering that he's lost everything. And I think as counselors, when we reframe it like that, and we help them understand that they're, I call it juggling while they're riding a bike, they're doing a really good job, right?
Yeah, that's good. Because how do you do that and ride a bike at the same time?
Not very well.
Not very well at all. And that's the thing. And so normalizing it as something that is happening, you're not alone in that too. Because I feel like sometimes we feel like we're the only ones experiencing things. Because who are we talking to and telling this stuff to? I don't know. Maybe you're telling your girlfriends or whatever, or your friends. But really, the experience is, again, part of that shared, the unified experience that you described earlier. We're all here together experiencing it in our own way. But so much of it is not uncommon. What you just described, that is what is happening. And so if you're watching us live, you are watching Help Healing in Everyday Life Problems in the COVID-19 World. I'm Dr. Shana D. Lewis, and my guest tonight is Dr. Kate Walker. She's a marriage and family therapist. So if you got questions about family, about couples, about churn, I said churn, I'm from the South. This is how we say they churn. And if you got questions about any of those things, please be sure to put them in the chat box. We're definitely here to answer those questions. And so I'm wondering a question about, because families go through different phases, even couples do, right? So you have the couples we described earlier who are just launching, maybe they're new. Then you have the couples who have been together for a couple of years. And then you have those that might be older as well. Are there any differences that you're seeing right now in the experiences at different stages of coupling? Or is it really just this universal thing that it all looks the same?
It's really, the best word I can tell you is weird, just because, as I mentioned earlier, it would be nice if we could have that unifying thing, but we don't, because especially, and I got to tell you, this is in the last 3 weeks, now that things are opening up and it is becoming a political issue. It's something that as marriage counselors, I see it during election years. I have different members of the household taking on these different views. So there is no normal us, we yet. And I'm still kind of waiting for that. My mentor, Dr. Judy DeTrude, she taught me in my master's program back in 2000, right? And she taught us about roles and rituals, and how those things, just like a family dinner or a game night, or, things like, your holidays, celebrations, we don't even really have that. And I think as a marriage and family therapist, that's where I'm tending to go next. I want families to start developing some rituals, some things that they do that will start to give them kind of a home base because of, because when you have, 3 kids home from college, a husband and a wife, and everybody's on on a different page with the mask issue, but you can all gather around and eat dinner together.
Okay.
That's going to bring you to a different place.
Yeah, a more unified place.
Yes,
Like. Yeah.
yes, and not an us versus them place, right? But really an us place, and who are we? And then the narrative's going to start to take off, right? We hope. We survive things. We get through things where we can disagree and still love one another. We can, go to the store, come home, use the hand sanitizer, and still give, grandma a hug or whatever you guys decide to do as a family. And I think that's really important too, as therapists, to remember this is their choice. This is a family's choice, right? This is one of those beautiful places where we get to sit back and just learn how our families want to do this, right?
Got it. And for every family, what you choose can definitely be very different because of what works for you. That's good.
Absolutely.
That's very good. So the other piece that you mentioned that resonated for me was you have to talk though. So you can't decide if you're not talking. And so I know, there are some, folks and families that will say, I just don't want to. I would rather go to my room, close my door, and whatever it is, it's going to be. How detrimental is this silence that can happen, which may be a product of your own overwhelm, maybe, and your own symptomatic, reaction to what we're dealing with. But how detrimental is that actually if we're not even talking to each other, kids, parents, or whatever? Everybody dealing on their own.
Well, in a couple of spaces, number one, of course, it's, we're counselors. We want people to talk. We want you to have communication skills and solve problems. I often tell people that stressed out people can't solve problems. That's why, pilots have checklists, right? Pilots have checklists because they can't problem solve when they're in trouble, right? They have to have a checklist. So helping families get to a place where they're able to be calm is only one step, right? If they don't have a history or a narrative where they solve problems, or it falls onto one spouse to be the problem solver, but now everybody's home. It's like we mentioned before, it's just, yes, we're talking, but we're not talking well, right? So as a counselor, we can help people, find new roles or help the family member that's usually overseas have a role or something that they do. But I need to bring up something else that's really important because, part of this being alone in your room or being, really for me, that's code for being on your phone. And we're seeing so much vicarious trauma, right? We're just seeing so much going on, especially, Black and brown families experiencing what they're experiencing, what they see over and over again, the videos that are live. We know Black and brown families anyway experience higher levels of PTSD. And now what we're seeing is just, even reading the comments section of some of these videos is traumatizing. And so these families, they're not just in one pandemic, they're in 2.
You're right.
And so as family therapists, we can't be blind to this. None of us can be blind to this. We have to recognize and be able to somehow be a resource to these families who are going through this.
Oh, you made a great point. That is so true. It's not just one pandemic. It is absolutely 2. And that hadn't occurred to me in that languaging, but it's interesting because my kids came to me with the questions about the things that are happening recently occurring. And now we're having conversations that I wish we didn't have to have, but we do have to have, right? Obviously at this point. So that's a whole nother level of stress, a whole nother level of trauma that you then have to mitigate in the midst of the one that we already had going on. So we're talking about families that are nothing we've ever seen before, right? So this whole thing is foreign to us. The level of stress on top of the other things like Dr. Whitaker talked about, unemployment, where families can't even take care of themselves sometimes, and all these other issues, domestic violence being very high, child abuse being higher at this point, but folks are not getting as many resources because calls are down. But it's happening, right? And so there's so much stress. And I wish there was just something we could just sprinkle and say, like, here's the magic pixie dust. Let's just put this over everybody's house and help us all to heal, because we really got to figure out, how do we heal in the midst of this amazingly emotional and traumatic time? It's really a healing. It just feels like we need one so bad. I've heard people say, I'm just so sick of everybody. Like, I just want to run away. I'm so tired of being, and what the words we've used, stuck in the house. And I've challenged folks to consider because stuck in the house has a very negative connotation versus safe at home, which feels better.
Yeah, I like that.
And so that languaging can help us, even if our own healing. So I just feel like there's multiple levels of healing that have to happen right now for families to be able to function well, right? I feel like we got a couple of questions. Let me pop these on the screen right quick, and then we can continue. Sarah has asked, should I be concerned if my grandson, who is 14, plays video games all day long? He only stops to eat, use the restroom. He's very quiet, is her concern. What would you say about that?
I think too much of anything is a good thing, and I think initially when kids were going to their soothing items, as long as they were legal, I think a lot of us were willing to sort of be okay with that. And but anything can become a crutch. It can become a substitution for socialization and good coping skills. But this is part of that, you don't want to grab the phone out of the kid's hand, right? A 14-year-old, and Dr. Shannon, you're probably going to have, more experience working with this age than I do, but, I help parents come up with these conversations. And I also help parents be one step ahead of kiddos, so if you only want your grandson to be on the internet for a certain amount of time every day, then maybe the internet goes off for everybody, or, the power cord gets suddenly lost somewhere. Right. And I think also as parents and grandparents and caregivers, we really get locked into this idea we have to teach them a lesson. You don't. You really, really don't, right? I mean, if you decide to move, the flower arrangement from the table to the countertop, you don't call a family meeting, right? So if you decide to take the power cord and lock it in your top drawer, you don't have to have a family meeting. You're the mom, you're the caregiver, you're the dad. Right. So you can tell the child, hey, look, this is this is kind of what we were talking about. My house, my rules. I love you so much. I've decided that you're on too long. I'm going to take care of that in my way. I hope you find some ideas. Here, let's play cards. And that's, I think, the part that parents don't like to do. It's that, okay, now we have to do something together. I think after about 10 minutes, we're going, okay, here's your power cord, go back, right?
And that's exactly what happens, doesn't it? Because those things become pacifiers for parents. Because we got the parents working at home, and what someone said last night, trying to work from home. Good luck. With a house full of kids, a husband, a wife, and whatever else you got going on, and people constantly coming in, interrupting, thinking because you hear that you got you're accessible because you hear, and that thing becomes a thing that keeps you quiet and occupied, so that I can then manage my own stress. So it becomes one of my coping mechanisms as a parent, perhaps. But again, but what message do we send, right? Having a nice balance of those things is probably best. They can have their time and we can have ours, but how do we negotiate all of that? Becomes a question.
And, sometimes our best friend is love and logic, right? Because these are good parents, these are good caregivers, and we want good for our kids, but we're busy and we just found out we lost our job and we have to pick up 2 more shifts. And, this is just the way it is. There's something I read about last week called the Stockdale paradox. I believe it's called Stockdale paradox.
Okay.
And it's interviewed, a guy who'd been a prisoner of war. And he had survived 4 years in this prisoner of war camp. And they interviewed him and said, okay, well, who made it and who didn't? What kind of folks made it? What kind of folks didn't? He said, well, the folks that didn't make it were the optimists. They were the ones who said, okay, we'll be out by Easter. Oh, we'll be out by Christmas. Oh, we'll be out. Eventually, they died of a broken heart. So the Stockdale paradox is the sooner you can grasp that this is just how it is right now, then families can start to be resilient and get some resources together. It's like, okay, look, I do have to work 10 hours a day. I cannot play go fish with you. I am okay with you being on your video game, but we will put everything away. And, I made my husband go to the storage unit and get our fishing poles. You know what? We're going to go fishing.
Right.
And I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but this is what my hope is, Shayna. And I'm all about the narrative. I really hope the healing comes at that family level when we start to recognize, yeah, this is just what we've got right now. We've got to work, and we've got to work hard. We've got to bring in income. We want to make sure that the next generation has a great life and opportunities, and we're going to go fishing. We're going to have these conversations in family time.
Yes.
It's not Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
No.
We can make something good out of this.
Absolutely. And I love that, though, because the idea that you're describing is we come into a place of acceptance of that this is the thing that we got, right? And then, and even that reminds me of the whole grieving process, because that is one of the final stages. I like the very last stage of creating new meaning from what all of this even means.
Yeah.
And I've chosen to try to help people to see that there's a gift in all of this, right? If you look for it for your family, I feel like it's a major family gift if you choose to see it. It's funny you said fishing, because we went fishing probably 2 weeks ago, which I never do. Like, I don't do, that's not the thing that resonates for me. Like, let's go fish. I'm just going to tell the truth. It's not, but the gift of COVID-19 is like, okay, what can we do where we can be socially distanced? We can enjoy each other in a different kind of way, and just have some bonding time. It happened to be fishing. Me and us and the catfish. That was about all it was.
I'm not touching a worm, and I'm not taking it off the hook.
No,
I'm just going to hold it.
Yes.
And I'll put it down.
He did all of that, and I was just casting and sitting and trying to figure out, oh, wait, something's on the end. Can y'all come help me? That was it. That was my role. I'm just holding and don't let it go.
Yes.
But that's the gift of it all. So, I mean, I love the healing is in the narrative of the family, the story that you want to create right now. That is so powerful, and I'm hopeful that folks get that you get to decide, right?
Yes.
Like, that's something that we get to decide. Many of us may feel out of control because of COVID-19, because clearly there's a lot of this that we don't control. You don't control where it goes, what it does, who gets it. You don't get to control those finite things, but you get to control how you perceive it and all the other stuff in the middle of that. But to me, that's just where the gift rests. And I'm hopeful that families are able to connect those dots to find a space that they can heal with each other, because that's really what we got.
Right.
The end of it is each other.
Yeah. And that gift, and I know when people are in the middle of the cancer treatment, they don't want to see the gift, or if they're in the middle of the surgery, procedures, they don't want to see the gift. So, that may be, that's a hard sell, right? That's a really hard sell. And so I think, helping families really think in terms of one day at a time, 1 minute at a time. And, Sarah, if I had you here, I would tell you, look, just be easy on yourself. Do the very best you can. Realize everybody's doing their best, and everybody's just really grieving and sad. But we're all going to get to a place, where it'll be a different day. I don't know. I can't. It's hard to even talk about the future, because that's one of the interventions that we use with young adults. It's like, okay, well, where do you see yourself in the future? Where do you want to live? What do you want to drive?
You don't know.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows. So I think we focusing on the here and now, the fishing poles, the card games. And just, I know we're working our butts off. I know you've got to work, and I know you've got to bring in income, and that's just forgive yourself. That's okay. That's where you are right now. That's all right.
Well, that's good when you talk about forgive yourself, because sometimes I think, we can hold ourselves to this standard of, I'm supposed to be this kind of mother, and I'm supposed to be this kind of father, and it's supposed to be like this. And if my kids are on this longer than X amount of time, then I have somehow broken the rules of, the medical academy and the board or whatever, and they always ask the question, well, how many hours of television do they get? And how many this or that? And you're like, when do you want to know? Like now? Or before? Because it looks different. So allowing yourself permissions to, none of us are perfect. That's like a unicorn. I say you're gonna be looking for her, but it doesn't exist. But being okay with what it looks like now, because parenting, what we're describing in part of this conversation, looks perhaps a little different than it used to look because of the resources, the circumstances, the emotionality, and all of the things that we're all faced with right now. So it's just so much. It's so
a
much.
lot.
It's a
I've
lot.
got 3 kids and they're 5 years difference, so my youngest is 10 years apart from my oldest. And I tell them, look, each one of you got a different parent. I tell my oldest, you got the beginner mom.
Yes,
I
yes,
dropped you a lot.
yes.
Right.
That's so funny.
And
Yes.
then, so the middle kid, my youngest kid, and it's not how we thought it would be, right? Because, where are the resources, right? I
Mhm.
don't know about y'all's 401ks, right? But it's nothing looks like we thought it would.
Mhm.
And so, again, as counselors, I think we help families reframe that.
Mhm.
And it's hard. It's hard
Mhm.
because these folks have worked hard their whole lives,
Yeah.
and they've taught their kids this amazing work ethic. If you work
Yeah.
hard, this is going to happen. That's
Yeah.
still there. It's still
Yeah.
there. It's just a matter of, okay, where are the opportunities now, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
We can do so much, and helping families just really start to think outside the box. Remember, we can't think if we're stressed. We can't think if we're anxious. So
Gotcha.
if you still got the elephant sitting on your chest, and this is something I think is so important, and we haven't really talked about it yet. If you are suffering,
Mhm.
if you're in a family and you're arguing with your spouse, or your kids just feel like they're just too overwhelming for you, or you're noticing that you're drinking more than 2 a night, or your
Mhm.
cocktails are doubles more than singles, right?
Mhm.
Stop a second and ask yourself, right? If it's affecting your sleep, your eating, if it's affecting
Mhm.
your concentration, you're crying too much, you're getting too cranky, things you used to enjoy you don't enjoy anymore. Medicine is not a bad word. And I
Mhm.
tell folks all the time, if you had allergies, you take a Sudafed. And a
Yeah.
Sudafed is a personal decision, right? Nobody's
Yeah.
going to tell you how to treat your allergy. But when you're in a
Mhm.
family,
Mhm.
your mood, how you solve problems is going to determine and affect how people relate to you, right?
Mhm.
And so, as a family, you can't think in terms of just you and how you want to handle your anxiety or how you want to handle your depression, right? You have to think
Mhm.
in terms of, wait a second, I've got to be relatable.
Mhm.
My role in this family is, head caregiver. I've got to
Mhm.
be relatable. I
Mhm.
can't just go earn money and say, well, I did my job, or I got everybody fed and watered. Okay, that's it.
Right.
No, you have to be relatable. So please, please give yourself some grace. And if you
Yeah.
feel like you need some help, let your physician know. This doesn't have to be something that's long term. It can be something just to help you for the time being. But
Mhm.
this time that you spend working on being relatable, and yes, I know I'm using that word, it's kind of a weird word, but being relatable, being that person that your teenager, that your toddler, that your young eight, and that your middle kid can come talk to,
Mhm.
right? Being that person is going to get you so much traction down the road as your family starts to develop this new narrative as survivors and thrivers and creators. All right. So,
That's good.
I don't know if you've talked about that before, Dr.
We,
Shana.
we briefly, but I'm glad you brought it up again
Mm-hmm.
because we haven't talked about it as it relates to the people around you,
Yeah.
right? So we talked about it from an individual perspective on how, getting treatment for yourself, medication, therapy, whatever it might be, that is called for helps you. But absolutely, how you operate in this world does affect the people around you for sure. So if there is family breakdown or if there's family distress and you're feeling the weight of those things, I love what you said. It's completely okay for you to say, you know what, I need to do something for me, but it will affect the greater good of the family of which I rest inside of. And that's important. Very, very, very important. And so right now, one of the things that I can say I am appreciative of COVID-19 is it has made therapy available in a way that it
Yes.
hasn't made it available before, right? Because telehealth was a thing that was just gaining traction for some insurance companies. All of them didn't agree to pay for it. Now everybody can get it. You got a plan, you can get telehealth therapy because this is the way we were all forced to do it. So
Right.
if you need the help, it's available to you and it's super. It looks just like what we're doing right now. You're
Yeah.
sitting at home watching something, you're talking to a person in a HIPAA compliant way, and it's the best thing ever. And I'm glad about that, and I'm hopeful that reduces what my fear is that if folks don't get help, that not only do we have a medical pandemic, but we have a mental health pandemic. because too many people suffered without getting treatment, without talking about it, without seeking help, asking for help, resources, and things like that. And then families as a unit begin to be affected because one person in a family can definitely, we impact each other, and those become breakdowns across the world, right? And so I'm hopeful. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a big point, to get help if you need it, for sure. So some folks would say, I've never been in family therapy. What does that look like now? Because if it's four of us in a family, are we all, in this telehealth world sitting on a couch together? What does that look like in your practice? Okay, how does that work?
It's funny because family therapy, I think back in the day really was, everybody would show up and, we'd just get a bunch of chairs and all sit and talk it out, right? Usually what family therapy looks like today is I'll have one member or two members of a family present, and they'll present with something that they want to have different in their life or their family. And we discover that, oh my gosh, if we had more people in the room, we could really get some traction. And so as we talk, we toss around the idea. It's very, very flexible. Would you like to have this person in the room? What are the pros? What are the cons? Okay. Then I assure everybody that everybody will be protected, right? There's no ganging up on anybody. I am one of my other jobs, back in college, I was a basketball referee for high school boys. So I'm very good at stopping and being a traffic cop. Yeah. I don't have a whistle anymore. Yeah. But that's my job, right? A family therapist's job is to make sure that everyone gets equal, we call them utterances, right? Everybody gets equal time to speak. Everybody's goals are valid. Everybody's feelings are valid. And there is no abuse allowed. And nobody comes with an agenda, not even me. So it's a really nice place to work out things. And it's also brief. I think a lot of people don't realize that when you work with a family therapist, it's going to be brief. We're there to get stuff done. If you want to go, dig into your childhood and all that good stuff, we'll do that in individual therapy, right? But for family therapy, we're working with a presenting issue that's causing you some pain, right? Job, relationship, health, and freedom. Once that's better, you're good to go, right? I mean, we can come back and work on other things, but that issue for your family, if your family's good, then we, as the therapist, we slide back into the bleachers and we're just clapping, right? We're just saying, way to go, good job.
While you're doing the work. And I love what you said, where there's trouble in job, relationship, health, and freedom. Did I get those right?
That's it, yes.
Love that. So if you're watching this and you're wondering, do I need family therapy? Would it be beneficial or helpful for us right now? Think about those things. Are you struggling in any way inside of those things? Could be a great time. I mean, and I think now could be a great time, because if you're able to be still, we don't have as long commutes, most of us anymore. Those kind of, like, your ability to commit your time differently is available to you if you don't have some of the constraints that we once had, right? Because of the new world that we live in. It could be a great time.
Yeah, I mean, even the telehealth platform that I use, I just found this out last week. People can be in two different locations, and a car makes a wonderful therapy room. So I can have somebody parked, eating their lunch over here, and somebody parked over here, eating their lunch. So you don't always have to be in the same room. You can be in different places.
There you go. You can't get more convenient than that, because you don't have to worry about my schedule and your schedule, and when we show up together. So now it's so much more convenient, y'all. So I'm just hopeful that folks who are watching this, if you think that this is the time for your family to get help because you're dealing with some of the things that Dr. Walker has described, don't hesitate to do so. Give yourself permission to take care of your family, because I love the fact when you describe that this is we are creating the narrative of our families right now. There will be stories told about this time right now in our family, decades, like our great grandchildren will have the stories passed down about what happened right now in the COVID-19 world. How do we handle, what do we do, that kind of thing. So definitely we're creating those stories right now. So we only got like a minute or two left. I tell you, time flies by like bananas when you're having this time. If there are any other questions, please post those down before we hop off. But I want to ask you, Dr. Walker, how can folks reach out to you? If people are in Texas, you want to, they're looking for somebody to help them, how can they reach out to you?
Well, there are a couple of ways. My clinical practice is called Achieve Balance. achievebalance.org. Achieve Balance is one word, .org. And if you're in Texas, you can schedule a 10-minute consultation just by clicking the orange button and selecting 10-minute consultation. If you're a mental health provider and you're watching this from someplace else outside of Texas, I do consultations as well, so I can help you start to maybe navigate this post-COVID practice world. And we have some Facebook groups for folks who are supervisors, mental health supervisors at Texas Supervisor Training. And those are great groups if you are a mental health provider and maybe even supervising other counselors. So trying to make sure we hit all levels to make sure everybody's getting their needs met.
Absolutely. And the website for your consulting is Kate Walker.
KateWalkerTraining.com. Yes, ma'am.
Got you. That's what I was thinking. I'm gonna pop that up here as well. So families, you go to Achieve Balance, and clinicians, you can go to KateWalkerTraining.com. Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Shana.
Thanks for being here. So if you have one last word for families, somebody's listening, and this is the last thing you want them to consider, what do you want families and couples to be thinking about right now?
You get to rewrite your story every day. Every morning you wake up and you can rewrite your story. So own it. Own what you need to do, right? Take responsibility. If you need to get some help, get it, right? You have one job in that family, and that is to love everybody. All right. And if you find it right now too hard to do that, don't beat yourself up. Get some help, right? Just take care of you, and the rest will follow, right? That's going to be the narrative. Y'all are resilient. You can do this.
I love that. Love that. You got one job. That's just to love. Oh, yes. That's beautiful. Yeah. So take care of yourself first. Hope y'all caught that. That was good stuff. Please share this video, share this interview. Someone in your timeline, someone in your world might be struggling, and this might be just a thing they need to hear to help them frame that in a way that allows them to begin to do the work that they need to do to rewrite and create the story that they want their family to have during this COVID-19 world. So wonderful, wonderful, wonderful conversation. Kate, I appreciate you so much for being willing to be here and joining us for day 4 of Helping a COVID-19 World. Can't believe we're already 4 days in. We got 1 day left. So I want to put you back in the green room, bring Dr. Whitaker up here, and we're going to sign off. Hang on for us for just a second, though, okay?
All right. Thanks again for having me.
Excellent. All right. All right. Dr. Whitaker, come on back in this house. I mean, listen, families better get it together. We can do what we do, right? So good.
I took some tips myself. I was like, let me take some notes for my own family.
Exactly. Let me write that down. If this was helpful to you, just let us know in the chat box. Give Dr. Walker a thumbs up, some hearts, some love, whatever those things might be. Tanisha saying thank you. You're very welcome. I think we're as strong as our families can be, right? And so our ability to keep us connected in a world that has so much division anyway, for lots of reasons, and has so many other things that are working to pull us apart, we really need to be in the space to consider how do we work together to keep our families intact. I love that. I love that. I love that. So this is day 4. What else we got left, Dr. Whitaker?
So we have 1 more day left, and tomorrow we're talking about substance abuse. And so all of these things kind of work together, right? You're in a family and somebody is struggling and they're trying to figure out a way and they don't want to go to therapy. A lot of times they self-medicate with some kind of substance. And so, tomorrow will be great. And so you can get some tips and things of what to look out for and what to do if you suspect that somebody in your family or someone around you is struggling with substance abuse. You'll get all that tomorrow. So stay tuned. Join us for one more night. We have some great experts tomorrow, and you'll get some great information.
Yes. So you want to be here. I tell you, a week goes, we think first a week is a long time, but it's really not. Sarah says, thank you so much. You glad you did, Sarah. Grateful for your question, and hopefully that helped you kind of think about what you can do for your grandson as well. So we just say thank you guys for being here. You could have been anywhere on a Thursday night, but you chose to be here with us on Helping a COVID-19 World. We're just here trying to help folks navigate this world that is foreign to all of us. I say many times, I am waking up every day in a foreign land. I don't know the language. I don't know where directions or anything, but together we're going to figure this out. You don't have to do it alone. That's what we are here to do to support you. If you want real life, up to date, real time updates about this summit, you can text HELP to 224-435-5433, and you'll get those straight to your cell phone as we go. Okay, y'all have a great night. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Good evening.
Good night.
Bye.